What team was the best team to never win an NBA championship, in your opinion?
I was thinking about this question too, and I got to, because what happens is it's all about matchups, right? Every team has a team that has their number. So Houston had Phoenix's number. Phoenix had Seattle's number. Seattle had Houston's number. But in my lifetime, I got to go with that 83 Bucks team.
Wow.
They had possible defense. Sidney Moncrief.
We were just talking about that team, too. That's crazy.
The problem that they had was they kept running into Philly. Because they own Boston, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Boston had Bird, McHale, and Parrish. They owned them. They kept running into Philly. And they couldn't get past Philly. That was the problem.
So the Bucks owned Boston, but I'm assuming Boston owned Philly, and Philly owned the Bucks.
There you go.
Now that cycle's crazy. That's just how it goes.
That's sheesh.
I'm actually looking at the players they had now, so I hope this is probably not the right year because
he said 83.
Okay, so Marcus Johnson, Junior Bridgman, Sidney Moncrief, Paul Pressey, Ball Lanier, Charlie, Lanier, Charlie Chris. So this is the team that you're picking, OG. The 1983 Bucks.
OG was
either them or the 98 Jazz.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
OG.
That's another great pick.
Was Sidney Moncrief a better defender than Michael Jordan?
I don't know if he was a better defender, but
he was more consistent.
He was just as good as Jordan. Absolutely. Jordan was bigger than Sidney Moncrief. If Sidney Moncrief was 6'6", he'd be the best perimeter defender. He'd be better than Scottie Pippen.
Oh,
he was only 6'3".
Little guy.
If he was as big as Jordan, he would be, because he had ridiculous length. And back then, you could put hands on guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He kept his hands and his feet busy. He was tough as nails. Sidney Moncrief was hell to deal with. Hell.
I'm gonna go next, and I'm gonna name this team. And to this day, I'm so upset that they didn't win a championship. It's very recent. The 2017-18 Houston Rockets, 65-17, the best offensive rating that year. Chris Paul, James Harden, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, Eric Gordon off the bench. They had Rivers and Gerald Green and those guys. Lost in 7 games to Golden State, to one of the greatest teams assembled in NBA history because Chris Paul went down. Is it 100% guaranteed that the Rockets would have beat the Warriors if Chris Paul had not went down? We're not sure. Would I have picked the Rockets to win? I would have. And Game 6 and Game 7, arguably the worst days in my life. There's a picture of me sitting down with my head down with my hand on my forehead when they lost and Steph Curry erupted. Man, honestly, this is the team I'm going with, the Rockets. James Harden is my favorite player. I'm hoping he does win in Brooklyn, but if James Harden never wins a championship, we will all look back to this year and say, damn, that could have been the year.
I'm going to piggyback off.
Didn't they lose again to them the next year?
Yeah.
Oh, the Warriors have had the Rockets number
They lost
for a while now, yeah.
It wasn't just
you know why I don't they did lose the very next year, but I think losing Ariza was huge because you had to insert Gordon into the starting lineup. And I know Kevin Durant was out, but Kevin Durant was out for 1 game and a quarter. So it's not like he was out for the entire series, because for the first 4 games, Steph Curry struggled in that series. Kevin Durant was playing like God in that series. And James Harden was matching him as well.
Steph Curry has 0 points in the first half of that Game 6, and they end up winning.
Yeah, and that's the one I was just thinking of right now. I mixed it up with the 2018.
33.
That's insane.
But this is why I don't blame the Rockets for losing the very next year, is because that same Warriors team with the big 3 of Klay, Steph, and Draymond embarrassed Portland. Portland had a double-digit lead each game in the conference finals, and they kept coming back. And Curry was phenomenal. Because I told people that Rockets team versus Golden State, Kevin Durant puts the Warriors over the top. When you have Curry, Klay, and Draymond versus Paul, Harden, and Clint Capella, that's an even matchup still.
100%.
That's an even matchup still. So the fact that Golden State won a game and a quarter didn't surprise me.
But we can't leave out, and I'm going to let you guys get right to it. We can't leave out that, in that game 7, even though Chris Paul got hurt, 0 for 27 in the fourth, shooting the long ball. James Harden 0 for 11.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yep. And that's where look, I'm a huge James Harden fan, but this is where I struggle with James Harden.
I think Trevor Ariza was 0 for 9 or something like that.
Yeah, he was.
All were historically bad. PJ Tucker, too.
James Harden in the regular season, I see him hit these step-back threes all the time, even though he is a volume shooter. And then in the playoffs, I see these game 7s. I see that 2 for 13. And I'm just like, this just isn't the James Harden that I'm used to. And the same thing happened versus the Bucks in game 7 in these past playoffs. I know James Harden was hurt. He said he was playing on basically a grade 2 hamstring. I have 2 problems with that. One is that, why did you tell us it was grade 2 after the series? And because you lost. I think he was looking for some sympathy points right there, even though I don't want to diminish his injury. Second, he was having open shots. He didn't make them. We've seen players in the past before play through injuries and make those shots. And I know Harden is only human, but they're open shots. And he didn't make them when you needed them most. In overtime, he missed an open 3 as well. So did Joe Harris. But that's why year after year, I see Harden come up short in these big moments. And I'm kind of getting tired of defending it because it just keeps on happening.
I'm going to backpack off Joel because I have the Rockets here too, but I was debating between the 98 Jazz and the 18 Rockets. And I ended up leaning the Rockets a bit because me personally, I believe this Golden State Warrior team is the greatest team ever assembled. You have 3 of the greatest shooters of all time on the same team. You have the greatest shooter of all time, probably the number 2 greatest shooter in Klay Thompson. You had Draymond Green, arguably the greatest defender, and one of the best defenders in the league right now. You have the Hampton Five, where you have Andre Iguodala, and they were in position to win that series had Chris Paul not gone down. And you have Harden in that MVP season. You got the Rockets, the number 1 seed, like you mentioned, and it's unfortunate to think that I personally believe you have that momentum going into Game 6 in Oracle. Oracle's is a tough environment, but we've seen teams go into Oracle and win. We've seen LeBron go in there into Oracle. Listen, I'm not trying to say, obviously, LeBron's a different team. That 2016 LeBron team, that Cavs team was different. But we've seen teams go into Oracle and still beat them. And so it's not out of the question that if CP3 was healthy, they definitely could have closed out because that momentum was completely on their side. And the fact that they were able to even push this team, that Warriors team, to 7 is impressive in and of itself. So I feel like that's why I lean the Rockets. I completely get the Jazz. You got Malone, you got Stockton. Russell was a great defensive piece right there. Havlicek, excuse me.
Havlicek.
John
Hornacek.
Hornacek.
Thank you.
Hornacek.
Thank you very much. It's
You messed me up.
Yeah,
no, that's
for
on
real.
me. The H's got me messed up. It's like that roster was so well put together. You got Malone, one of the best, probably the best player to never win a championship, and they just couldn't get it done because they couldn't slay the beast in Michael Jordan. But I just feel like this Rockets team, 1 game away from being the greatest team ever assembled, and that's rough.
Rev the historian, what's your take?
I had a few teams I was thinking of. 96 Supersonics. I was thinking of the 14 Spurs. Not 14, pardon me, 13 Spurs. But
They won the next year, so I feel like that's all right too.
yeah, but I feel like it has to be the 16 Warriors. It's no way it couldn't be 73-9. They had arguably the greatest team season and the greatest season for all their individual players. You had the unanimous MVP who had arguably the greatest season in NBA history, or at least what we've seen, the best season we've probably ever seen. They had the defensive player of the year that year in Draymond Green. Klay Thompson makes an All-Star. All 3 of them make an All-Star. Yep. They have 2 All-NBA players. They walk into the playoffs. 73-9. Steph Curry hits 400 threes. Then the team comes back from a 3-1 deficit against probably one of the best OKC teams of our generation. Granted, they blew the 3-1 lead. Obviously, we know that part. But that team was just so dominant. Steph Curry was sitting a record fourth quarters. They were blowing out teams. I think they were 25, 26-0 at a point of the season.
That's what got Luke Walton his job.
Yeah, that team was extremely phenomenal. They were just breaking records all that year. And, we can look at, teams from the past. A couple of those Bird teams that didn't win were phenomenal. A couple Magic teams were phenomenal. the Stockton and Malone teams were extremely phenomenal. But I think this team, even the 03 Lakers who lost to the Pistons, or 04, I forget which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that team was good too. But I think like this team right here, with the fact that they dominated as a team and then individually they had their success with all their guys, winning 2 of the major awards in the NBA. I think that team easily has to be the best team that's never won a championship.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. It's definitely between the Warriors, Rockets, and you picked the 83 Bucks. And you also thought about the 98 Jazz as well.
You mentioned OKC, and let me tell you that Harden, Russ, Kevin Durant squad, Serge Ibaka,
Steven Adams.
there you go. Like that roster was so. It's
Harden was
It's a
not
shame
there.
that Russ really couldn't
No,
put
Harden was
Harden
not
was
there.
there.
No,
Harden
Harden
was
was
there.
that 2012 team.
Oh, pardon me.
That 20
They were
Third
kids,
time-
a
though.
young, definitely
They-
a
Adams
young.
wasn't there.
They were kids though.
They were young, definitely a young core, but the
They were
fact that
kids.
those three together, they couldn't keep that OKC team, or that organization decided to move on from Harden so quickly. Truthfully, it was a foreshadowing of the future events for that organization.
NBA
but
history could have been significantly different if they stayed on the same
no
team.
doubt about that.
But it is crazy that they all went on to go win MVPs. Kevin Durant won an MVP in 2011. But
2014.
D-Rose won in 2011.
oh, you're right. Oh my gosh,
2014
I'm getting my
KD won.
years mixed up. So
That's
yes,
fine. Get my facts screwed up sometimes. It's all right. That's
Westbrook, Harden, Kevin Durant all won MVPs.
The-
That's crazy.
That 11 team, the Miami team that didn't win was a really good team too.
Yeah,
They weren't ready
That's a
yet.
fact, but LeBron wasn't ready mentally.
I'm
Yeah, they
saying
weren't ready.
pre-finals though, those against Boston, Indiana, LeBron
Definitely.
was on one.
No doubt. That Eastern Conference, LeBron was spazzing out. He got into the finals. He just crumbled like I've never seen.
Well, of course, I can honestly say to you today that it was different. But back then in 2011, if I told you, because just so you know, in the Eastern Conference Championship in Game 1, the Bulls beat them by 20.
No, we smoked them.
So if I tell you after that first game, just so you know, the Bulls ain't winning another game in this series, and I got $1,000, you would have been like, I raised you $1,000.
Yeah, no
I'll
doubt.
take your $1,000 and let's put another $1,000 on it. There's no way you would have believed me if I would have told you after y'all smoked them in Game 1, Chicago's not winning another game in this series. You'd have been like, really?
Yeah, I didn't think we were gonna win that series, but I didn't think they was gonna beat us 4 straight.
Just
times.
walk right past you in 4 straight games.
But
You'd be like, yo, they ain't winning another game.
Once
There's no way.
they figured out our offense, which is really D-Rose and just everything else happens, I think, and they switched, they started trapping Rose out the double team. I think it got really bad after that, because they just
There was actually one change that they made. Put James on Rose. That was the difference in the game.
bro.
That was
That's
the
all you
difference.
really needed
Everything
to
else
do.
that they was doing, they just put James on Rose. Everything you do, I do it. I'm just 6 inches bigger than you, and I'm fast and I'm stronger than you. Shut them down.
the Heat were lucky though because if they would have faced the Melo Knicks that lost to the Pacers,
Here we go.
we might be
yeah.
talking
He's
about
chatting,
different.
OG.
We
He's
might be
chatting,
talking
OG.
about
He's
different
chatting.
champions.
He's chatting.
That's all I'm
Here we go.
saying.
Hey, OG, let me ask you, hypothetical. If Melo comes to the Bulls in 12, you think we could beat the Heat?
No, because Melo was, wow.
I wish my
Melo
would
was
have
very
won.
Melo was very much about buckets, and that
In
Bulls
12
team,
to
That was the year
I'll
we
let
could have got
OG
him.
finish. I'll let OG finish.
Melo was very much about buckets. That Bulls team was being built. They got Derrick Rose in the draft. They got
Noah in the
what am I
draft.
saying?
Dang
Noah in the draft. They got those guys. They were building that unit and and they had a good continuity with that team. The reason why it fell apart is because Derrick Rose got hurt.
Don't remind me, please.
But one thing
If
I'll say,
Derrick Rose doesn't get hurt, they're right back in the middle of it.
That Melo-
Absolutely. And I don't know if adding Carmelo to that keeps that dynamic going. I think that might screw them up.
You also miss Luol Deng too.
Right. They
Yeah,
got
yeah,
him
yeah.
in the draft.
So that
So
Melo
they were building
offseason,
that unit.
that Melo offseason is the offseason the Bulls went out and got Carlos Boozer.
Yes.
Okay.
No. It was.
Or they already had Boozer.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get Melo.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you have I think Luol Deng, you might have had to trade him maybe. Or slide him to
No, Melo was supposed to take a pay cut
yeah.
because
He was supposed to get $80 million.
we were supposed to give him
Which
20
he was
mil.
not trying to hear. Melo was about his money.
Yeah,
Melo
he
was
chose
absolutely about
the
his
money over us, and D Rose didn't want to go pitch for him.
Yeah.
That's just not the type of guy he is. So he's like, I'm not
But
doing that.
D
That was a
Rose,
mistake.
Deng, Melo, Boozer, Noah, that would have been pretty good.